Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a horror anthology from Japan, Japanese language English subs, released in the year 2005, directed by Akira Jisoji, Atsushi Kaneko, Hisayasu Sato and Segura Takeuchi, and this film is called RAMPO Noir. So RAMPO Noir are 4 stories that are based on the works of Edogawa Rampo, who is a legendary horror writer in Japan, and these stories involve love and insanity. So the first story is a man who's naked. He comes to this secluded pond in the countryside, and when he looks into the pond, it's basically like looking into his inner self. So it's a descent into hell, and all these nightmarish images start to splash on the screen. The second story involves a man who's a mirror maker. He's a little bit unhinged. Well, that's an understatement. And so he gets the attention of the police because there are a few women that have been found dead, and the police believe that there is evidence to suggest that has something to do with the mirrors that he's making. The third story involves a war veteran who has no limbs from a horrific accident, and his wife systematically abuses him when he's home, and for reasons that we're about to become aware of. And the last story involves a chauffeur to a celebrity, and this chauffeur becomes dangerously obsessed with this woman, so much so that it starts to spiral down into the levels of danger. So what is in store for the viewer in each segment is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on RAMPO Noir. I definitely think the biggest draw card to this film was not only is it a horror anthology, but it's based on the works of a horror author that I am really not aware of. And so it was a new experience for me. And so that's definitely something that's enticing for me. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be enticing for a lot of viewers out there, especially if you are a fan of horror from this corner of the world. And so I had my skepticisms coming into it. Now, I really haven't been overly excited about horror anthologies recently. I reviewed a movie called The Field Guide to Evil that I thought was pathetic, and so for that reason I was a little bit hesitant coming into RAMPO Noir, but I'm a fan of Japanese horror. It looked crazy, and as I said, basing it on the works of someone that I really have no idea about, the levels of curiosity were there and sufficient enough for me to go and watch it. After watching RAMPO Noir, I will say that I was pleasantly surprised. This is a very unhinged experience. It's an extreme experience, and it's definitely going to offend a lot of sensitive viewers, and that's exactly what you come to expect from Japanese horror. And not only does it deliver in that promise, it also delivers in what the brief is to make a good horror anthology. Now, what it is self-awareness, not trying too much, making these movies for the right reasons. Is that Field Guide to Evil, you had a whole host of fine directors, but I always felt as though they weren't really putting any passion into it. It was there just to sell off their name. Whereas in this movie, I genuinely felt that the directors were a fan of Edogawa Rampo's work, and they were more than willing to try and put some effort to splash this guy's work vividly onto the screen and actually bring this author's words to life. And they do it in a way that I thought was morbidly fascinating, is that this is a movie about love, but it's love in a very ugly way, is that we always see love as sugar-coated romance, stuff to make you feel happy, stuff to aspire to, but when it shows you the ugliness, it creates a very uncomfortable feeling, and RAMPO Noir really intensifies that uncomfortable feeling through not only very bizarre and very morbid imagery, but also very uneasy interactions with these characters. And so it always felt like a dream. It felt like a dream that you didn't want to be part of. And showing you love in a way that it does in this film, it's, as I said, it's showing you the ugliness. It's showing you the underbelly of love. It's the love that we want to turn the other cheek to. We don't want to acknowledge it's there, but sometimes love can spiral down into the world of obsession and insanity. And that's exactly what creates that horror feeling, is that Edogawa Rampo, he's definitely going to gain a few fans after watching this film. And so you've got 4 stories, and the 4 stories work because each and every one of them goes for about 40 minutes in length, all with the exception of the first story. And the first story was the biggest weakness to this film. That's something I'll go into a little bit later, but the 3 stories go for about 40 minutes each, and it tied up all loose ends. I never felt unsatisfied with what I got, and so that's something I really liked. And it shared the tone of morbid fascination, but it enabled itself to really create characteristics of its own. And so I never felt as though these stories were blending in together. I never felt as though, okay, I watched that story and it was no different from the last story. I never had that feeling. It's because time and attention has been put into each and every piece. And so that's where I got the respect these directors had for Edogawa Rampo's work, is that they genuinely wanted to make horror experiences for an audience, to showcase an author to different corners of the world if you aren't familiar, especially if you're like me, who's never heard of this guy. And so if you are oblivious to this man's works, these stories are going to make you want to go and track this man down. And that's exactly what you want from a film based on the literature of a horror writer. So I thought that was very good. I thought the acting was very good. As I said, it's a very quirky film. I really like the different styles of colouring. You've got some very grey colouring. You've also got some very vibrant colouring. And so it makes just a very nightmarish feel that I thought was fantastic. And you've got some scenes of extremity that really deliver as far as the promise of Japanese insanity. So if I had a problem with the film, is that the first story in particular, I just thought as though, okay, it wasn't terrible, it was very interesting, but I always believed that it was supposed to be a wraparound story, but it didn't really wrap anything around. And so although it's not a terrible sort of aspect of the film, it paled in comparison to the three stories. So the three stories were fantastic, but I thought as though that particular element to the film of this man looking into the pond, I just didn't feel as though it really went to the lengths that the other three stories did. And so it does become a little bit of a passenger as far as the whole experience is concerned. But pushing that aside, I didn't really have too much of a problem with that. It didn't derail the experience. The movie didn't need to come together to make a feature style of film. I felt as though it was just paying tribute to a horror writer that these directors were fans of, and so for that I really have to applaud RAMPO Noir. It's definitely not for everyone. It is a crazy film. It's a very bizarre, strange, so as I said, everything that you want from Japanese insanity. So if you are a fan of that style, then definitely go out there and see RAMPO Noir. There are some scenes that are going to absolutely shock you. There are scenes that are going to make you feel very uncomfortable, which is everything you want from a horror experience, and so it really nailed the brief. And if it sounds like your cup of tea, definitely go out there and see it. I'm going to give RAMPO Noir 4 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies and I'll see you later.